The Lagos State House of Assembly is set to replace the existing 37 local council development areas in the state with area administrative councils. The LCDAs were created by President Bola Tinubu in 2003 when he was governor of the state. Each area's administrative council shall now be funded by the local government area under which it falls. This is contained in a bill for a law to provide for local government system, establishment and administration, and to consolidate all laws on local government administration and connected purposes, which had gone through a public hearing. The bill specifies that the system of local governments will be controlled by democratic elections. According to the bill, there shall be 20 local government areas in the state as specified in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 1999. Well, for this conversation, let's now turn to Acting National Publicity Secretary of the Youth Party, Ayodele Adio. Good to have you on Newsday. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So, what do you make of this new moves by the Lagos State House of Assembly, to redefine the functions and purposes of the 37 local council development areas?
Well, first, they've been compelled by the Supreme Court decision to make that very important change because the Supreme Court ruling was quite clear that funding will only accrue to elected local governments that are recognized by the Constitution across the country. And, for Lagos State, it is 20 local governments that are recognized by the Constitution, and it's those 20 local governments that are going to get funding directly from the federal allocation. So I think it was the sensible thing to do. To make the adjustments in that, law, to make provisions for them to be able to receive the funding that they deserve from the center. The problem, however, is the extension that they're trying to do, which is the additional 37, which is to be the LCDAs that are now going to be, what areas do they call them? Is it administrative areas? And that is the crust of the matter. That becomes, a problematic situation because the 37 administration areas are not recognized by the Constitution, and they are going to be headed by people who are not elected into office. And in fact, if you read the local government law, even the updated one is about to be passed, it defines the local government council as headed by an elected local government chairperson. So as long as you are not elected into that office, if you are appointed, there is no way you can have funds accrued to your council, whether it's a registration area or an LCDA. It doesn't matter. It's just semantics. You cannot control funds as if you're not an elected member of the local government.
And this is causing quite a bit of confusion. Why is it so tense with this allocation of money and also with the LCDAs? Should they exist?
So I'm not sure why there is tension anywhere, because it's as simple as daylight, right? And the problem is coming from, listen, the argument that is being made by the lawmakers in Lagos State is that the 37 LCDAs have been beneficial to the people of Lagos. And I'm not debating that, whether it's beneficial or not. Now, our argument, for instance, is if it's indeed beneficial to the people of Lagos, the State House of Assembly has the powers to retain these administrative areas. The only difference is that they just have to make appropriation and funding available to run those local government development areas. And then you wouldn't have any problems at all. The problem is that you want to fund these development areas from monies that are coming from the federal government, which creates all sorts of confusion, because by design now, what typically should happen is that if a TIOSA local government gets his money for October, or November we're in now, so if he gets his money for November, what he's expected to do by that design is that he has to share the money with the administrative head for VI, the administrative head for Ikoyi or Balinde, the administrative head for TIOSA East. It just makes absolutely no sense. Because if you look at it again, on the flip side of it, is that we're having people control funds who were not elected by people from those areas. And that creates a constitutional problem. Because if I didn't elect you, on what basis are you controlling the funds that would accrue to my own local government, where you are supposed to be representing, my interest? And that creates the huge problem. So for me, I just don't think that there is a need for this entire debate, right? If you are so passionate about having LCDAs, you have the right to maintain those LCDAs. Just simply create a first-line funding from the state budget that funds these, LCDAs, and you can go on and appoint whoever you want to lead this administrative council, and we'll live happily ever after. It doesn't create any problem whatsoever.
But from our understanding of the bill, it seems, that these LCDAs will still be under the control of the local governments. So in that kind of situation, would it be okay, for instance, if it was the local government making these appointments of who will head the LCDAs against, the governor having the power to appoint or to fire? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that makes common sense, right? If a local government chairperson decides that, okay, maybe Etiosa is quite a large expanse of area for me to govern effectively, and maybe I want to appoint somebody that will sort of oversee Koyo Balende for me or oversee Victoria Island for me, I think he probably has the right to do that because he is the executive elected person responsible for that particular local government. And he can do that within his powers. What he cannot do, or what the law stops him from doing, is to channel the funding that comes from his local government to people who are not elected into that local government to then assume the function of a local government chairman in that particular expansive area. That is where, the problem is. And sincerely speaking, if you asked me, I've been a bit disappointed with the way several governors have handled this entire Supreme Court decision, right? In fact, we're going to be in court sometime next week to challenge the new law in Anambra State, which we believe is a complete violation of not just the Constitution, but the Supreme Court decision. I don't know what the obsession with local government funding is, right? The arguments that certain governors make is that if we leave local governments, they're not going to run effectively. They need us to support them with salaries and things like that. My argument is, if they don't have the monies to run the local governments, they will have to cut staff. You don't have to try to save them because, in essence, you still have so many state governments who control local government service commissions, and they recruit on behalf of these local governments. So they are the ones creating the problems in the first instance, right? So the argument that they can't survive without us, I just don't think it's a strong argument in my own opinion. So if you're so concerned about their funding, please just leave them. Let them do what they want with their funds, and would have checks and balances from the elected parliament and the local government to ensure that those monies are judiciously used and there's transparency and accountability at the local government.
There really is an obsession with the local government.
A huge one that I don't seem to understand.
Must be quite large or quite beneficial. But what's the way forward with the situation as it is?
To be honest, we're going to fight this to any length because we cannot have a situation. There are three things fundamentally wrong with this bill. The first is that it gives the governor unwitting powers to be able to sack and suspend elected local government chairmen. That has been settled by two Supreme Court decisions in Ekiti and in Oyo State. The Supreme Court was clear that governors do not have the powers to sack elected local government, chairmen. And so our argument is that that provision has to be expunged, that you can't just give the governors the powers to wake up one morning and sack a local government person. The second, obviously, is what we have just discussed extensively now, that if you want to have 37 registration areas, you can do that, but fund it, right? The State House of Assembly has the power of appropriation. You can create, an appropriation from the budget to fund those LCDAs, and we wouldn't have a problem with that. The third, obviously, is the fact that, you want these registration areas to be able to create and appoint councillors. Now, that's a fundamental flaw because councillors are elected and not appointed. You can't appoint people to represent me. It's a contradiction because councillors do two things. They just don't represent people in a council, in a ward. They go in parliament, that's the local parliament, to checkmate the executive. And so if the executive is appointing people into that office, that's already conflict of interest. So we cannot let that happen. So I think we're hoping, because we made those submissions to the Lagos State House of Assembly, we hope that those provisions and those sections are amended in good faith. If they are not, they definitely will be challenged in court. We'll definitely take this to court and ensure that we follow it up to the very end, because we have to protect the sanctity and the independence and the autonomy of our local governments. Because I believe fundamentally, if you get governance right at the local level, that will translate to good governance across board.
So, what about lobbying the National Assembly to officially recognize the LCDAs? Will that be maybe a long-term solution?
Yeah, they can do that, right? I mean, the Lagos State, the members of Lagos State House of Assembly, if there are parties in power and the state at the center, so they can do that. They can lobby to have that recognized, but it's also a problem because the moment you try to push that, every other state across the country would also lobby for more local governments and more, so it creates an entire problem on its own, really and truly. But for me, I keep saying, it's not just a hard thing to do. You can have your mayors. The state governor can have mayors appointed in certain places across the state. You can have LCDAs to continue to do the good work that they claim that they're doing at the moment. And that's totally fine. Just take your eyes off what is coming from Abuja and look inwards, to fund these LCDAs. And it won't have any problems at all.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for coming in for this discussion with us. Ayodele Adio, the Acting National Publicity Secretary of the Youth Party.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.